Welcome to Fantasy Audiobook. Chapter 21. Concubine. Never live under others. Single quote. Never be humiliated. Single quote. Single quote, comma, single quote. Ah, if I had known that being a woman in this world is so hard, even if I am extremely young, I would still be a prisoner. And there are so many dirty, shameless, despicable and hypocritical men in this world. I will never come to this world again. Snake Girl grabbed the stone, turned the sharper side inwards, closed her eyes and wiped it on her neck. Boom. A loud bang. But it was Chowzi who, after realizing the Empress' intention, jumped up to her and struck the ground with his giant diamond fist. Shiji said, "Ah," and was knocked over by the cracked earth and rocks. The stone in his hand also flew out from his hand under the impact. "You stinky bitch." Josie was furious and walked to the Empress hopping on one leg. "You actually seek death." Chowzi grabbed the queen's messy black hair, lifted her up, and stared at the queen's neck with vicious eyes. I saw that a deep and broken blood mark had appeared, and a trickle of blood was flowing out. Fortunately, Chowzi took action promptly and decisively. The stone knife just penetrated the neck and wiped out 2 centimeters, but did not cut off the entire neck. As Josie took a breath, he felt a pair of scary eyes staring at him. Seeing the Empress's eyes widened, her fierce look revealed. When Chowzi saw this, he was so angry that he slapped the Empress hard on the face. Then he let go of the Empress' hair and cursed. "If you dare to seek death again, I will pull your hair." He was furious. They worked hard and had to sacrifice dozens of brothers before they could complete the task assigned by Loya. If the Empress dies, how will they explain to Loya? Don't talk about gaining Loya's friendship by then. I'm afraid Loya will get angry on the spot, fall out with them, and become mortal enemies. The Empress fell to the ground. The cheek that was originally hit by Josie's punch has become swollen and no longer shows any amazing beauty. At this moment, 5 huge fingerprints of blood appeared again, and blood flowed from the corner of his mouth again. However, Josie had just finished cursing. I saw the Empress grabbing a handful of dirt from the ground. Josie looked stern, thinking she was going to splash it into his eyes again. But after the Empress grabbed the dirt, she stuffed it into her mouth and swallowed it silently. At this time, Beasta and Marco also walked over with fearful expressions on their faces. Seeing this situation, everyone looked dull. "She is eating dirt." Marco and his wife couldn't turn their heads. Chowzi was still shrewd in this regard and reacted immediately. "Wrong. She's killing herself again. This time I plan to commit suicide by eating dirt. The soil cannot be digested and accumulates in the stomach, bursting the esophagus, and people will die soon." Marco and Beasta were stunned. Josie was so angry that he reached out and pinched the Empress's slender wrist. He now knows that this woman is extremely strong. No matter how much he was beaten or scolded, he never cried or made a sound, he just wanted to die. After Chowzi pinched the Empress's wrists, he was very decisive and broke the Empress's wrists with a snap. "If your hand is broken, let's see how you continue to eat dirt and seek death. You won't die if you bite your tongue and commit suicide. Those in TV series are all fake." Her hands were broken, and the Empress's eyes widened in pain. Cold sweat dripped from her forehead, but she didn't let out a cry of pain. "Hey, you don't have to be like this." Marco was moved when he saw it, his laziness disappeared, and he spoke very calmly. "You are the Empress, we all respect you. I tied your feet with seastone ropes to worry about your ability to fight back. We won't do anything to humiliate you. But what you are doing now is asking for trouble. You are also asking for humiliation." The Empress heard this. Not looking at Marco, he just lowered his head, spoke slowly, and said word by word. "If you don't want to humiliate me, just give me a good time. I don't want to surrender to anyone, let alone fall into anyone's hands as a trade commodity." Hearing this, Marco and the other 3 fell silent. "We tied you up and waited for someone to rescue you. How do we answer your words?" "How? Nothing to say." The Empress spoke slowly again. "It seems that it is destined to be treated as cargo again." It made her look as if she were dead. "Asshole. What are you going to do to Oni-sama?" Marigold appeared in the distance, limping with injuries, screaming in pain with a hoarse voice. And in the jungle behind her, injured female warriors were slowly walking one after another. "I will never forgive you stinky men. If you want to harm the Empress, step over my corpse first." As soon as the warrior leader Kikyo finished shouting through clenched teeth, he fell to the ground with a thud. Almost all the bones in her body were shattered by Josie's impact. To be able to hold on and walk so far was a sign of extremely strong will. The few female warriors who still had some strength left picked up the damaged arrows and put them on their bows. It shot toward Marco and the other three in a swish. Beasta swung his long sword lightly, and there were several wind blades, cutting off all the arrows and shooting them down. 9 snake women. They are all very respectable. Marco lit a cigarette, took a deep breath, and said with emotion. He just finished speaking. It was a hoarse female voice shouting to the sky. Rush. But it was the national protector Chong Jia who got up from the ground again and screamed to the sky at the top of his lungs. Come on. More female warriors roared. Then with a crash, he really rushed out. Some of them, like Marigold, was limping, and some of them had shaky legs, and it was obvious that they no longer had any strength. There is also a second sister of Snake Lady, Sandersonia, crawling on the ground. She has to move forward too. Sister. Sister. Sandersonia's eyes are red, directed towards the only goal. Go ahead. This scene made the 3 Marcos very moved. It's a pity. In this world, only power can protect you. Beasta held 2 swords in his hands and stood in front of him with cold eyes. You are very respectable, but without strong power, your efforts are in vain and you cannot change anything. He said slowly, replacing the blade with the back. Let's all go to sleep. Beasta raised his cold eyes and leapt forward. Yes, only power. Beasta's figure pierced the sky. With his 2 swords in front of him, he was about to dodge and knock down all these tenacious remnants of soldiers. But at this time, God avoids. A figure as fast as lightning appears suddenly. From far to near, a group of female warriors suddenly passed by. And towards Beasta, he lightly swung the knife. A sword energy flew out from the blade. Just this sword energy. But it has a different atmosphere. Black. Pure black sword energy. One after another black lightning. From this black sword energy. Erupting forward like a thunder snake. When Beasta saw the color of the sword energy, he was startled. And when the black thunder that burst out from the sword energy touched him, he suddenly felt numb all over. I was originally planning to lower the blades of both swords to block the sword energy, but it was stalled. Because of the black thunder that burst out from this sword energy. And for a moment, my body was paralyzed and I couldn't move. What's this? Single quote. A shocking thought flashed through Beasta's mind. Subsequently, he could only watch helplessly, this pure black sword energy. It hit him in the abdomen. Chapter 22. God avoids. Roger's signature move. Loya certainly didn't learn this trick from Whitebeard. Because Whitebeard doesn't know how to do this either. But this does not prevent Loya from learning on his own. Enlighten yourself. Practice it yourself. The so-called God avoidance. The armament hockey and conqueror's hockey wrapped around the blade are highly condensed in the form of a flying slash, and released. A crescent-shaped arc-shaped sword energy, that is black and bursts with black thunder is formed. However, strictly speaking, divine avoidance is not sword energy, nor is it a slashing attack. Because it's a blunt blow, an impact. It cannot cut through objects as sharply as real sword energy. Just in appearance, it looks a bit like sword chi. The principle is like this, so God avoids the power of this move. It all depends on the quantity and quality of armament hockey and conqueror's hockey played. Because Loya has only recently practiced this move. Therefore, the amount of hockey that can be controlled at one time is not much. And the width of this divine evasion, sword energy, is only more than 1 meter. It's also a far cry from Kid's 10-meter wide super dodge that the red-haired kid can do 3 billion times in one move 2 years after the original work. But even so, this move is also extremely amazing. Beasta's limbs were paralyzed by Conqueror's Black Thunder, and his body was unable to move for a moment. Then he was hit in the abdomen by the god. On the spot, he spat out a mouthful of blood with, wow. The impact of being avoided by the gods pushed him backwards, and flew backwards at an extremely fast speed. His face was twisted into a ball of pain. As he was flying upside down, with a hint of disbelief, he managed to open one eye and looked carefully at the figure who had swung the attack. Loya. Single quote. It's really him. Single quote. How can this be? Single quote. Isn't he a doctor with the ability to heal fruits? Single quote. How come you still have such terrifying power? Single quote. Call out. Boom, boom, boom. Beasta instantly flew backwards for hundreds of meters, repeatedly breaking down the thick trees along the way. When Josie and Marco saw this, they couldn't help but look at each other. Josie leaned into Marco's ear and said, "Wow, Beasta's acting is so good." After he saw Loya appear, he immediately breathed a sigh of relief. Damn it, you're finally here. If we had to wait a little longer, the Empress would probably be so desperate that she would throw herself on the ground and commit suicide regardless of her image. After all, her wrist was broken, so she wasn't completely unable to move. So Josie is very excited to finally hand in the assignment. Then my broken leg will be healed later. As for seeing Beasta being knocked back hundreds of meters, Josie took it for granted that it was Beasta's acting. After all, God was far away from Josie and the two in that scene, and Beasta had his back to the two of them. How could Josie see the truth? Marco didn't see clearly either. It just felt like something wasn't quite right, it didn't quite feel like an act. But he couldn't believe that this was caused by Loya's attack. In Marco's impression, Loya is young, and even though he has some strength, his energy should be mainly used to develop fruit abilities. His combat power may not even be able to defeat the leader of the White Squadron, who is the weakest. Therefore, even though Beasta looked very different from the actor, Marco could only agree with this conclusion for a while. However, the Empress is not far away, so they have to continue acting without revealing their secrets. Then he whispered, "Brother was defeated, we should be angry at this time." "Ah, yes, yes." Josie nodded and looked back at the Empress. But she seemed to be oblivious to everything around her. He looked completely helpless and sluggish. And the Empress is indeed like this. She was in severe pain all over her body. Because she was too desperate and sad, her mind went blank. She didn't even look up at the scene where Beasta was shot away. Her ears were buzzing and she couldn't hear anything. Who? Damn it. You dare to attack my brother? Are you the reinforcements invited by the Empress? Josie started acting, shouted loudly, and shouted to Loya from a distance. Loya sighed. He used a divine move to avoid damage and knock Beasta flying. This happened a few meters in front of Marigold, Kikyo and other female warriors. Every female warrior saw clearly that the powerful white swordsman, all of them together, would be easily defeated by him. But he was defeated by a young and handsome strange man who suddenly appeared in front of him with one move. This made them all stop their progress immediately, and they were shocked. Everyone looked blank, looking at Loya's back in shock and suspicion. At this moment, Chowzi shouted several times, and the girls suddenly woke up. Reinforcement. They looked at each other, completely unaware of this. And there are many doubts in my heart. My sister has always hated men the most, so how could she invite a man to be a reinforcement? After Loya heard Josie's call, she did not answer. She glanced at the Empress 10 meters behind Josie and then turned to look at the girls, smiling and saying, "Ladies, my name is Loya. I have come to your island to ask for help from the Empress. But the timing seems a little tricky. I want to confirm first. Are these people in the Whitebeard pirates your enemies? Of course. Do you even need to ask?" Marigold's tone was rude and did not give Loya a good look. Just because Snake Girl hated men, she acted in unison and shared the same hatred. Of course Loya is not annoyed. Okay. Then I will repel them and rescue the Empress later. Girls, please say a nice word for me. After all, he didn't care about the reactions of the girls. He raised his sword and turned around, and it turned into an afterimage like a stream of light. Head straight towards the Empress. When the girls saw this, most of them looked happy. This man is calm, elegant, young and handsome, and seems to be powerful. Naturally, it can arouse the favor of the girls, and now he proposes to rescue the Empress. Of course they are overjoyed. We can't trust him yet. Men don't have a good thing. Marigold said, "Follow me and move on." The girls were shocked when they heard this and calmed down from their excitement. Yes, you can't place your hopes on others. The warrior leader Platycodon also said. Then, under the leadership of the second daughter, the girls once again raised the power of breastfeeding and moved forward with difficulty. Haha, you're good to go. I want to see how much you weigh and dare to go against our white group. When Chaozi saw Loya rushing towards him, he was surprised at how fast he was, but he didn't think much about it. After all, the Empress also had such speed. He laughed loudly and acted, turning his whole body into diamonds and covering armament hockey, jumping up on one leg and charging toward Loya. He also made up his mind. When Loya swung the knife, he pretended to be defeated and flew out. Anyway, the Empress was almost unconscious and could not see anything. God avoids. The two were 3 meters apart, and Loya swung the knife lightly. The pure black sword energy burst out with black thunder. Josie was stunned. Immediately, the black thunder made his whole body numb. Boom. The moment God avoided it, he bombarded him in the abdomen. Make an amazing noise. The armament hockey in Josie's abdomen was shattered, the diamond body was shattered, and large cracks appeared. Wow. Chaozi's eyes turned black and he spurted out a large mouthful of blood. Immediately, the whole person was hit by the divine sword chi and flew backwards quickly. Chapter 23. This time, Marco looked carefully. Immediately I realized something was wrong. Conqueror's hockey. With his sense of knowledge, he was sensitive enough to notice that the pure black sword energy wielded by Loya seemed to be the terrifying aura unique to Conqueror's hockey. Conqueror's entangled attack. Marco thought with his eyes widened in horror. Back on the Moby Dick, Whitebeard only said that Loya hides an amazing hockey, so the Conqueror's hockey may not have awakened. And there is a high probability that he has not awakened yet. Why did he actually use a super powerful move that seemed to be Ba Tang when we saw him today? How can this be? It's only been 2 months. No, I have to try it myself. Single quote. Marco thought. Because he always feels that cooperation with Loya is only a temporary necessity, and Loya's evil style and hidden ambition will eventually be destined to become the enemy of the Whitebeard pirates. So we have to guard against it. So we need to find out the details of Loya. Know yourself and your enemy. Marco immediately transformed into a human animal form, flew close to the ground, and took the initiative to meet Loya. And he doesn't intend to hold anything back at all. Qingyanyan. 20 meters away, Marco suddenly waved his pair of green flame wings. It was a ball of green flames, transformed into the form of a flying goose, and rushed straight towards Loya. Marco's flames are not lethal and are not real flames. He just wraps armament hockey with green flames, allowing the armament hockey to be highly condensed and controlled freely. Using this move to attack from a distance instead of getting close is naturally to guard against Loya's move of pure black sword energy. God avoids. One fresh trick, eaten all over the world. Moreover, Loya has only mastered this trick for a few days and needs more practice. 10 meters away, Loya faced Qingyanyan and swung out a pure black divine sword energy. But it is estimated that it can only be offset by Qingyanyan. So after swinging out a knife, his body suddenly folded, jumped diagonally forward, and swung out his sword with great force. Dozens of real sword energy swung out sharply. Loya is naturally the grandmaster of swordsmanship, because among the thousands of people he healed, there were at least 30 swordsman masters. The large ball of armament hockey wrapped by Qingyanyan collided with the divine sword energy. Suddenly black thunder flashed, cause huge shock wave. The land below was blown to pieces on the spot. The shock wave then weakened into a violent storm, sweeping in all directions. Within 100 meters, there was suddenly blowing sand and rocks, and it was dark. Dozens of Loya's sword energy struck. Marco's body was unstable in the strong wind, but he did not dodge. He could tell that it was an ordinary sword energy. In fact, it is difficult to dodge. Dozens of sword energy cover a wide area, so it is better not to dodge. And if the immortal thistle is used to defend, the green flame of the immortal thistle will be blown away by the strong wind. So he only used his green flame wings to block his body. Then he fluttered his wings and flew back, keeping a certain distance from Loya, who was running towards the ground in the strong wind. The fierce wind swept over hundreds of meters, and the girls who were rescued by 9 snakes were all knocked down by the strong wind. They were horrified. The fierce fight between the two had just begun, but the aftermath was so shocking. After the Empress was rolled back for more than 10 meters by the strong wind, her unconsciousness suddenly came to her senses. He lay on the ground and looked up. But she saw a figure speeding towards her in the hazy flying sand. It turned out that when Loya saw Marco pulling away again, she abandoned Marco directly, turned around and accelerated towards the Empress. He just touched the ground with his feet several times and dived close to the ground. In an instant, he crossed 60 or 70 meters and arrived in front of the Empress. He gently picked her up with one arm and held her in his arms. Man. Single quote. Snake G was instantly panicked and resisted. But the man's movements were not excessive. His arms passed through her waist, his palms supported her back, and he gently lifted her up and leaned on his shoulders. Loya held the sword in one hand and looked at Marco in midair. Loya, I'm a doctor. Although they are only 5 pawns, if you show me some face and let others to retreat, I will definitely repay you. Marco thought for a while and said, half acting and half seriously. Our Whitebeard pirates are famous. If you ask me to retreat, I will retreat. Then where is our face? And our side still has the advantage at the moment. Wouldn't it be a pity if we don't make a decision without a fight with you? The Empress that we worked so hard to capture just a few minutes ago gave up so easily. Doesn't that mean the sacrifice was in vain? However, although you are unknown, you seem to have some abilities, so I will give you some face. You can take the Empress away first, and I will wait for you to come back here. But I will only give you 5 minutes, otherwise I will lead all my brothers to attack the daughter's kingdom. By then, I won't be so easy to talk to. Loya smiled when he heard this. In that case, I respect you and will definitely come back and fight with you within 5 minutes. But he already guessed in his heart that Marco was not acting, but wanted to test his true strength. Sheathed the sword immediately. He picked up the scarred Empress with both hands, tapped the ground with his footsteps, and turned into a flying dragon that touched the ground. A few moments later, they arrived at the 9 Snakes girls. He gently placed the Empress in his arms on the ground and lay down, looking at Marigold, Platycodon and other women. I am a person with the healing fruit ability. Please give me a few minutes and I can heal the Empress's injuries. At this moment, Marigold was too embarrassed to speak loudly to Loya. After all, she had heard the negotiation between Loya and Marco with her own ears, and also saw with her own eyes that Loya rescued her sister. The Empress opened her eyes in surprise and glanced at Loya a few times, but remained silent. The girls were also hesitant and watched as Loya gently pressed his palm on the wound on the Empress' neck, and his hand emitted green healing light waves, slowly treating it. His ability to restore fruits can actually heal the Empress's entire body in just a few seconds. But for many reasons, Loya has reservations. And there are some secrets that he will never tell anyone for the rest of his life. To the outside world, the fruit is only called a healing fruit and its true name is never revealed. Half a minute later, the blood clots on the Empress' neck scabbed off and the wounds recovered as before. The 9 Snakes girls suddenly felt happy and looked at Loya with grateful eyes. Loya didn't stop. He held the Empress's broken left wrist with both hands and slowly treated it with green light waves. A minute later, the left hand healed. Shiji blinked her eyes in surprise, moved her wrists twice, and revealed a hint of joy. However, her expression suddenly changed. As if she thought of something, she raised her hand and gently touched her cheek. It didn't matter if he didn't touch it. After touching it, Shiji almost blacked out and fainted on the spot. Because she felt that one of her cheeks was swollen, and she was afraid that her face would be extremely ugly at this moment. How should she, a woman who loves beauty so much and is proud of her beauty, deal with the handsome man who rescued her? She just wanted to dig a hole in the ground on the spot and bury her head in it. Don't lose this ugliness. At this time, Loya gently grabbed Shiji's right wrist with both hands and went to treat it. Wait a minute, doctor. Snake Girl shouted softly, and when she saw Loya looking towards her, her face suddenly became hot and she tilted her head to the right, not daring to look at Loya. What's wrong? Loya blinked. The Empress covered her face with her left hand and stammered. I have an ugly face. I'm afraid I won't be able to see anyone. But also, I would like to ask the doctor if he can. Can he treat my face first? Her voice became softer and softer as she spoke, and finally was as thin as a mosquito's moan. Chapter 24. Yes, I was negligent, please forgive me. Loya's face was normal and he spoke softly and gently. At this time, the Empress' self-esteem was damaged, so the best thing to do was to take good care of her. But you can't look humble just because you have to take good care of her. Therefore, Loya deliberately called the Empress a girl, which means that I am gentle to you because you are a girl, not because you are the Empress, just to please you. After hearing this ordinary title, Snake Princess not only did not feel offended, but she felt a sense of intimacy in her heart. Because she was proud of her beauty. As an empress, she was supported by the people of her country, but she was already suffering from the cold. He is used to being aloof and enjoying being humbled and served by others. It had been many years since anyone had treated her as an ordinary girl and treated her tenderly as an equal. Suddenly, I felt a warm and relaxed feeling, as if I had returned to my carefree teenage years before being trafficked by human traffickers. Come on, give me your hand. Loya has been practicing medicine for more than 5 years and has experienced thousands of lives. She often gets along with rich ladies and ladies of nobles and wealthy businessmen, and she understands the hearts of such aloof women. The volume, tone and speed of speaking are all just right and gentle, making them feel close and trustworthy. He spoke softly and motioned for the Empress to take away her left hand that was covering her face. Snake G blinked, hesitated, and slowly took away her left hand that was covering her face, and gently placed it on the palm of Loya's extended left hand. In this way, Loya's left hand held Shiji's left hand firmly, allowing her damaged self-esteem to rest in a calm and comfortable place. Loya's right hand was gently placed on Shiji's swollen purple cheek, while emitting faint green healing light waves, she gently massaged it. Shiji took a deep breath and felt better. And the cool and comfortable feeling on her cheeks gradually made her become slightly dependent on Loya's gentle hand. She even closed her eyes slowly and comfortably. Okay. She didn't know how long it had passed. It seemed like a long time, and it seemed like a blink of an eye. After hearing Loya's brief words with a slight smile on her face, she slowly opened her eyes, and with a slight dependence that she was not even aware of, she asked suspiciously. Is this okay? Oh. She wanted to touch her cheek with her hand to confirm, and then she shyly remembered that her left hand was placed on Loya's palm. Shiji immediately retracted her left hand slightly, but after she retracted it, she suddenly felt that she had nowhere to place her left hand. It was not as comfortable as putting it in Loya's hand. But he immediately remembered that he needed to confirm the condition of his cheek, so he touched his face with embarrassment. But she saw that Loya had already picked up her broken right wrist and started to treat it. Snake G couldn't help but look at Loya's side face and thought. Has my face really recovered? Single quote. Why didn't he take a second look? Single quote. Is it because I'm not pretty enough? Single quote. She took it for granted that since her face had recovered, the doctor would be amazed by her beauty. In this way, in front of the doctor, I can regain a little bit of the self-esteem that was damaged when my face was swollen and ugly, and regain a little face. But now the doctor had no response, and his look and attitude towards her were no different from before, which made her feel confused and unwilling. Which leads to self-doubt. Is it true that although my face has been cured, it has become ugly? Single quote. Snake G was frightened for a time and began to think wildly. I just wish I could find a mirror right away and take a closer look. Wait, is it dirty on your face? Single quote. So my beauty has been covered up. Single quote. That's how it should be. Single quote. Shiji felt that she had found the reason, and her confidence immediately returned. She secretly clenched her fists with a little excitement. This grip. Then I suddenly realized it. Is your right hand okay? Question mark. Shiji felt confused. But Loya had already stood up and looked down at her with a smile. You should have a good rest here. After all, there are still some injuries that have not healed. I went to get rid of this wave of uninvited guests, and then I came back to continue your treatment. After saying that, he turned around and walked away gracefully, while slowly pulling out the sword from his waist. Shiji immediately stood up, covering her heart, staring blankly at Loya's elegant and upright back. Doctor, Shiji wants to say, we can fight side by side. So she shouted softly, stood up, and tried to raise her legs to chase after him, but she suddenly tripped and fell. Shiji, who fell down, looked at her feet angrily. I saw that the seastone rope had not been untied yet. She looked up again and glanced at the female warriors and 2 younger sisters around her, and she suddenly became furious. What did you just do? How come you can't even think of untying the rope around my feet? The 2 sisters looked at each other longingly, feeling a little aggrieved. The doctor didn't untie it for you, so why are you just scolding us? But then again, they were indeed negligent. Just because Loya was here, they relaxed and just watched Loya go. Not only to see Loya's miraculous fruit healing power, but also to see the physical contact between the Empress and the man Loya, it was novel. After all, they have never seen the Empress being so close to a man, and the Empress is also very docile. Gradually, some girls even just stared at Loya. The more I look at him, the more I feel that Loya is handsome and gentle. He is so different from the men I have seen before. It is impossible to look away. It's not an exaggeration. The men they had seen before were all when they went to sea with the Empress to plunder property. When they met, they would only shout and kill. Even if they met handsome men, they had no intention of admiring them. Moreover, those men might be attracted to the Empress upon meeting her, and then be petrified by her. How do you appreciate a stone? Only at this moment, they quietly watched Loya treating the Empress, did they gradually realize that men are good. Hormones are causing trouble, and they are suddenly attracted to each other. It is really normal. Back to business. Several female warriors helped Shiji untie the sea stone rope from her ankles. Snake Girl stood up and chased after Loya's back, but after running a few times, she was out of breath and was hit by all kinds of pain. At that time, Marco used a big move like Phoenix Seal to kick her hard, causing some injuries to her internal organs. Later, she kept fighting fiercely, and the internal injuries gradually became serious, and her physical strength was quickly lost. The fracture in her knee had not yet healed, causing her endless pain. And in the intestines and stomach, the few mouthfuls of dirt that were eaten are also stuck in the stomach, which is very uncomfortable. How can I be troubled by such difficulties? Single quote. Doctors must never be left alone. Single quote. Shiji gritted her teeth and was about to forcefully gather her strength to go to support. But I heard a woman's voice coming from behind. Excuse me, is this Master Boa Hancock? My brother said. Below the four emperors, he is invincible. Chapter 25. Wow. Josie was startled and opened his eyes suddenly. I actually fainted. Immediately, a sharp pain hit his brain from his abdomen, making him grimace in pain. Josie looked down. His diamond body has been lifted long ago. There is a bloody mark on the abdomen at the moment. It seems that the intestines are broken. Looking at this shocking wound, the scene where he was blasted away by Loya with pure black sword energy suddenly appeared in Josie's mind. That's Loya. Single quote. What kind of move is that? Single quote. Looking back, Josie still finds it hard to believe. Pure black sword energy seems to have been seen somewhere. Single quote. Just when Josie endured the severe pain and tried to remember. Rustle. The sound of footsteps came. Josie looked up. The double spear Izo, the fishman Namur, and the foil sword Bista. 3 people appeared in view. Josie's eyes finally fell on Bista, and he saw that he was holding his abdomen, his face was a little pale, and there was still some bloodline in the corner of his mouth. Suddenly he blurted out, "So you're not acting?" Bista's eyelids twitched and he said angrily, "Can you still get up? Can we fight another round?" Fight again. Josie was stunned. Bista said with a faint look in his eyes, "He is not polite to us. Besides, even if it's acting, you have to do the whole thing, right? Don't you want to give him something in return?" After a pause, Bista glanced at Yi Zhang and Namur, and then looked at Josie with a sneer. "There are 5 of us now. In addition, I remembered that more than 20 years ago, I watched my father fight Roger from the sidelines. Roger seemed to have used a similar pure black sword energy. It's just that I couldn't understand it at the time. I could feel that it was very powerful, but I didn't have any chance to experience how powerful it was. It's not easy to meet us today." Bista's eyes burst with passion and fighting spirit. "Josie, are you willing to be defeated and don't want to try to crack that trick?" Hearing this, Josie seemed to understand. His eyes darkened and he looked directly at the 3 people. "In other words, it won't be acting next. We want some real stuff." Izo turned the 2 guns in his hands. Muir clenched his fist, and the bones cracked loudly. Bista let go of the hand covering his abdomen, placed it on the hilt of the sword at his waist, and slowly straightened his chest. Exactly. Originally there were sparse vegetation on this hill. The soil was turned over by the hockey storm before. It has turned into a piece of sand. Loya wore a plain white suit and held a sword. He stepped lightly on the gravel and slowly came to the hill. Marco sat 50 meters away opposite, waiting with a smile. Yo, exactly 5 minutes. Marco stood up and dusted the sand off his pants. The 4 figures behind him also arrived at once. Each of them looked solemn, without the slightest hint of soy sauce. Loya saw this and smiled slightly. Very good. This is the energy I want to see from the white team leader. Hearing this, Marco also grinned. I'm sorry. At the beginning, I questioned whether your strength would be exposed during the performance. Marco transformed into a half-orc form, gently spread his wings and flew into the air. So, you have reached the level of general. Loya looked at Marco with a smile. When he saw that his upper body was naked, his smile became a little thicker. You put the phone bug in your coat pocket. Ah. Marco also smiled. I was afraid that you would feel bad if I broke it later. So I took off my shirt, put it on the boat, and called for help at the same time. A very far-sighted approach. Loya praised. Marco also smiled and said, what, the doctor is not afraid that the things in the clothes will be damaged. Do you want to give you some time to put the items in a safe place first? We can still afford to wait for this time. No need. Loya smiled calmly. Let's get started. When Marco and the other 5 heard this, their eyes suddenly froze. So crazy. Do you really think of yourself as a general? Bang, 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 bang. Armament Hockey opened fire first, and the 2 pistols fired bullets that entangled Armament Hockey. Without looking, Loya raised his left hand, wrapped it around Armament Hockey, and slapped him several times in succession like lightning. The bullet was shot back and reflected towards the 5 captains. Aha! The 5 captains set out at the same time, as fast as lightning. Loya stared, his eyes flashing scarlet, raised his left foot, took a step forward and stepped down hard. Boom! Kaka! The ground cracked, and pieces of earth and stone rose into the sky under the violent physical power and Hockey's impact. One sword style. At the same time, Loya raised his sword and charged up, star ring. Jung. A piercing sky-splitting scream, accompanied by a bright ring of sword light, all burst out. Marco's eyes widened when he saw this in midair. Such swordsmanship. Single quote. So Hockey. Single quote. Such power. Single quote. Is he really just a young man in his 20s? Single quote. The circular sword light centered on Loya, expanded outwards, and instantly cut through the huge flying rocks. The upper part of the earth and rocks that had stopped rising rose again under the cutting impact of the sword energy. As a result, large pieces of earth and rocks in midair blocked the progress of the captains who were planning to attack from all angles. And this circular sword energy struck at a height of 1.5 meters towards the 4 captains who were stopped because their steps were blocked by rocks and earth. Josie, Bista, and Namur were all tall. One was 5 meters tall, and the other 2 were over 3 meters tall, so they chose to jump up lightly. It's not that you can't block it with Armament Hockey, but there's no need to waste this energy. Yizhong, who was 1.9 meters tall, immediately chose to squat down, find the right angle, and shoot 2 cold shots at Loya. Then let's start with you. Loya's eyes flashed with scarlet observation Hockey. He turned his eyes, glanced across the void, and stared at Izo with a playful look. He stepped deeply on the ground with his back foot, stood on tiptoes, and Hockey's black flash faintly shot out from under his feet. Hockey's entanglement and outward release can not only be used for attacks. Force has a reaction. In an instant, Hockey explodes under the soles of the feet, and the reaction force of the ground can be used to eject the person at high speed in an instant. Therefore, in animations, we often see those strong people who usually have normal speed, but when they are about to take action at a certain moment, they suddenly burst into lightning-fast speeds. That's the principle. What's more, not only does he use the technique of erupting Hockey from his feet, he also uses his back muscles to erupt Hockey, continuously pushing himself forward. What's more, in order to make it difficult for the other party to capture the trajectory of his actions, Hockey can also flexibly control the eruption of his back muscles, constantly adjusting the direction of the eruption and changing his route as he accelerates forward. Thanks for watching. Please like and subscribe. Chapter 26. For example, in Onigashima War, Yamato fights Kaido, using God's Foot White Snake Drive. It is to first use the soles of the feet to eject Hockey, and then use the back muscles to eject armament haki to push, and continuously change directions flexibly during the process. But, besides that, Yamato's White Snake Drive also uses fruit abilities to boost it. She used the cold energy of Oko Shinshin to push herself together with haki. The speed is incredible. God's Foot Black Snake Drive. Single quote. The moment he stared at Izo, Loya secretly recited the name of the move he was about to perform. As a time traveler who understands the plot, Loya can understand and practice some of the moves of the powerful people who have appeared in the animation. And add your own characteristics and adjust them. Yamato's White Snake Drive is caused by the eruption of cold air, forming a winding trail of white frost behind it, which looks like a huge white snake. And Loya's Black Snake Drive. Naturally, it's because he doesn't have Yamato's cold air eruption ability, so he changed it to his own Conqueror's Black Thunder Drive. Boom boom boom. Erupted. Haki on Loya's souls exploded. This moment, Marco's color suddenly changed in midair. Haki has improved again. Single quote. His eyes. The one you're staring at is Izo. Single quote. What is he going to do? Single quote. Marco instantly felt that Loya was about to use his ultimate move. I suddenly felt something bad. The second passed slowly. The broken earth and rocks are still floating in the air. Marco was in midair, but was blocked by the numerous rocks and stones from rushing toward Loya. But at this moment, he realized that he couldn't hold back. Loya cannot be allowed to take action at will, because this is a strong man who has reached the level of general. Who knows what powerful moves he has yet to unleash. Stop him. Single quote. Marco's eyes flashed scarlet and he shouted in his heart. Phoenix Phoenix Seal. Single quote. Marco's wings suddenly flapped, and armament haki burst out from the blue flame wings with all his strength. Then Loya took the lead and launched his ultimate move Phoenix Seal at 0.0001 second. Driven by the full burst of armament haki and blue flames, Marco was like a meteorite from the sky, with a violent scream that shook the atmosphere. Boom. Marco's orc-like bird claw was in front and he kicked out hard. A huge ball of blue flame, wrapped in highly concentrated armament haki, was kicked out from under the bird's claws. But Marco's target is not directly aimed at Loya. Because he could predict with his knowledge that Loya was about to hit Izo's position at a terrifying speed. However, Marco could not predict Loya's trajectory. Therefore, this foot is facing a few meters in front of Izo. From this position, intercept Loya. I have to say that Marco's judgment was extremely accurate. In terms of intelligence and strength, he is undoubtedly the number one person under Whitebeard. Viceroy. The powerful arms of the Emperor. Haha. In this very short moment, Loya was about to explode, his eyes shining scarlet. He grinned an extremely happy smile. Unparalleled haki. Crazy. Zalala. Boom. Conqueror's black flash is centered on Loya, jumping around like a black thunder snake. God's Foot Black Snake Drive. Single quote. Boom. The ground beneath Loya's feet instantly shattered into powder. The earth shatters. The black trajectory, heading in the direction of Izo, suddenly accelerated in an instant. Izo was about to shoot Loya again. In an instant, all the hairs on my body stood up. A frightening feeling like being stared at by an eternal beast. Attack it to hide your limbs, nerves, and brain. Terror covers the whole body. Yi Zhang's eyes widened in shock, and his finger that pulled the trigger couldn't help but hesitate for a moment. He also vaguely felt that something was about to happen. Retreat. Single quote. This word appeared in his mind instinctively. Yi Zhang obeyed his instinct and, slowly, stood up, preparing to retreat. In fact, he moved very quickly. But compared to the speed of Loya and Marco, his movements seemed extremely slow. Izo had already fired 2 cold shots at Loya, and the bullets were still in the gaps between the surrounding rocks and soil, and were, slowly, approaching in Loya's direction. And Loya, who had activated the Divine Foot Black Snake Drive, turned into a giant wild black snake, with himself as the snake's head. Winding forward among the rocks and soil in midair. Avoided the flying bullets and bypassed the blockage of gravel and soil. At a terrifying speed that cannot be captured by Zhang's knowledge. Sweeping in fiercely like a man-eating giant beast. Loya saw this scary black snake with bursts of black flash. Marco was terrified. He realized that with Yi Zhang's strength, he would never be able to avoid Loya's terrifying ultimate move. Must, and only he, has enough strength to stop Loya. In midair as the phoenix seal was kicked, the green flame armament hockey's shock wave rushed forward, crushing all the rocks along the way and smashing the rocks blocked in midair into powder. Marco roared with his eyes wide open, and the armament hockey driven on his back and wings suddenly increased the intensity again. But at the same time, Marco, at this moment, I have begun to believe it in my heart. Loya, indeed, felt confident enough to tell them that there was no need to take off their shirts and store their belongings separately. Because he really is the realm of generals. Such physical strength, such conqueror's hockey, such masterful use of skills. We have reached the level of general. In a flash, Yi Zhang just, slowly, stood up completely. Then he saw this terrifying black snake beast. Came to about 5 meters. At the same time, a huge group of blue flames, shaped like a meteorite fire from the sky, also reached about 5 meters above Izo. This moment, Izo's pupils dilated rapidly. In the image reflected in his pupils, Loya changed from holding the sword in his right hand to holding the sword in his left hand. He turned his head slightly and glanced at the green flames coming diagonally from above on the right side. With a slight smile on his lips, he raised his right hand and stretched his fingers towards the huge green flames that were like falling fire. There are winding black thunders, bursting out from the fingers and palms. At the same time, the blade of the sword on his left hand turned and changed into a horizontal sword slap. Lips parted slightly, make a faint export gesture. Thunder, Ming, Ba Gua. Swing out the knife. The black thunder snakes out. How amazing is the speed of lightning. Immediately, Yi Zhang felt his limbs go numb. It was hard to move for a while. Is this Loya's true strength? Single quote. No wonder I saw Josie and Beasta looking like that before. No wonder Marco wants us to go all out. Single quote. Comma. Boom. A horrifying explosion. There was a sudden explosion. Chapter 27. Shiji heard the words, "My brother." His steps immediately stopped. He is invincible under the general. Hear this. Shiji doubted her ears. Turn around and look. She saw a young beauty with silver hair and brown skin standing there more than 10 meters away, staring at her with strange eyes. The woman's intuition told Shiji that the silver-haired and brown-skinned beauty opposite seemed to have a hint of hostility and jealousy. Brother. You mean the doctor? Shiji asked with a stern look. Exactly. Shalulia also replied with a sharp look. Damn it, this woman is so charming. No wonder my brother is fascinated by her. Look at her, she looks a little arrogant because of her beauty. Single quote. Single quote, comma, single quote. Damn it, I'm a little annoyed for no reason. As the hostility and jealousy in Shalulia's eyes grew stronger. However, Shiji also stood up tall and proud, and the pride in her beautiful eyes became even stronger. I'm so unwilling. Single quote. Obviously my brother and I are not related by blood. Single quote. And because we are not related by blood, I always feel that this family relationship is a bit ethereal, and I have a vague feeling that I can't grasp it. What if this woman excludes me after getting close to my brother, and my relationship with my brother becomes estranged? Hypnosis brainwashing often focuses on instilling beliefs. For example, being loyal to someone or an organization to the death. For example, for what purpose are you fighting? Even if you die, you will not regret it. It will be effective in a short period of time. Changing the way of thinking is often an aspect that is abandoned in hypnosis brainwashing. Because faith is what determines the direction of a person's survival and efforts. Although the way of thinking is also important, it only determines the character's personality and daily behavioral habits. Brainwashing in this regard is tantamount to changing the habits that the characters have developed over a long period of time, so long-term brainwashing is required to be effective. This leads to the idea that brainwashing the way of thinking is both laborious and thankless, so it is better to give up. Shalulia was brainwashed by hypnosis and instilled with the belief that she would overthrow the tyranny of the celestial dragons and remain loyal to Loya. But her way of thinking, Loya felt that there was no need to wash, and she didn't have the time to wash, so she still retained the thinking habits of celestial dragons Shalulia Palace. Because the brother Charlos is a man and will inherit everything in the family, and the younger sister Shalulia Palace will eventually marry into another celestial dragon's family. So in Shalulia Palace's mind, she has always been worried that after getting married, she will be ostracized by the women in the other family's family. In order to have someone to support her if she was ostracized, Shalulia Palace had always deliberately tried to please her brother, Saint Charles. My brother is a very important relative and my supporter in my mother's family. This kind of inertial thinking has now been transferred to Loya. Moreover, Brother Loya is not only gentle, strong, reliable, and handsome, but also has the belief of being loyal and never giving up to his brother instilled in his mind. When these things are combined together, Shalulia's level of dedication to her brother, Loya, becomes extremely astonishing. To some extent, it even exceeds the persistence of survival. Now, seeing the arrogant attitude of her brother's prospective wife, the Empress, Shalulia secretly felt that the Empress might be difficult to get along with, and her habit of worrying about being excluded immediately shifted to the Empress. Although Shalulia had offered to help her brother get the Empress, and she would indeed do that for her brother. However, he still couldn't help but feel hostility and jealousy towards the Empress, as well as a strong unwillingness to accept that the Empress occupied his most important brother. This, not entirely a bad thing. Even, from Loya's point of view, this can be regarded as a good thing. Because, conquerors' qualifications have two ways of awakening and growing. One type is awakening and growth under certain strong beliefs, strong anger, or deep suffering, etc. The other type is to awaken and grow in fierce confrontations with opponents who are also conquerors qualified. The so-called king comes to see the king. Facing the arrogant empress who has awakened conquerors, Shalulia's inner unwillingness, hostility, and jealousy will all become the fuel for her conqueror's awakening. The more unwilling she is, the more jealous she becomes, and the more she wants to win. Then, the firewood will accumulate more and more. When a spark opportunity pops up, the accumulated firewood will be ignited immediately. Fire forges gold. At that time, Shalulia's conquerors will awaken. But at this moment, Shalulia was able to maintain a calm self and not be obsessed with the Empress in the face of the charm that the Empress exuded all the time. It was precisely because of the hostility and jealousy burning secretly in her heart. The king comes to the king. The bloodline of celestial dragons gave Shalulia the consciousness of being a king, unconsciously, and she would never allow herself to bow her head to another king. This woman's aura is not very strong either, and she can't compare with the cadres of Baituan at all, but she can actually resist the charm exuded by me and is not obsessed with me. It seems that my face is indeed dirty, covering up my beauty. When Snake Girl thinks of beauty, she thinks of Dr. Loya, who makes her unwilling. Speaking of which, a gentle and considerate man like the doctor can actually utter such arrogant words as, he is invincible under the 4 emperors. It's true that people cannot be judged by their appearance. By the way, I have to help the doctor. Although he is a man, he is very different from the men we usually see, and he is also my benefactor. Just when Shiji ignored Shalulia and held her chin in her hand, thinking. When Shalulia on the opposite side saw this, she suddenly lost her temper and said, "What are you thinking about again? Don't ask me to say it again. Brother doesn't need your help. You are a wounded person yourself. If you go there, you will only be a drag on brother. Stay here to recuperate obediently. If you don't hold him back, you are already helping your brother." Shiji smiled arrogantly when she heard this, raised her hand and pointed at Shalulia. "For the sake of you being a doctor's sister, if you are disrespectful to me, I will not care about you anymore." Listening to the other party's condescending tone, Shalulia's brows jumped, and her heart became more annoyed. This woman is really arrogant. Single quote. Hateful. Single quote. After the Empress finished speaking, she flipped up her long hair coolly, turned around and ran in the direction of Loya. "Are you even listening to what people are saying?" Behind her, Shalulia shouted at her angrily. At this very moment, boom, accompanied by a dull loud noise, a large wave of shock came from the hill 100 meters away. Then there was another buzz sound, a circular dazzling white sword light. On the hillock 100 meters away, it bloomed, instantly expand to all directions. The aftermath of the cold sword energy passed over the heads of Shiji, Shalulia and others. It can't help but frighten people. And the next second, boom, 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 boom. A ball of bursting light exploded on the hillock, accompanied by a deafening sound that made the eardrums hurt, and a huge earthquake that felt like the earth was about to collapse. Several thick black thunders snaked across the sky. In the bursting light group, there are black, cyan and scarlet flames. The shock wave instantly increased from a few meters in diameter to a terrifying scale of nearly 100 meters. The hillock was razed to the ground in an instant. What followed was a violent storm comparable to a Category 12 typhoon, sweeping in all directions. No way. Snake G squatted down, blocking the wind and dust with one hand, looking at this scene with a horrified face. Such amazing fighting news. Is the doctor really as powerful as his sister said? Single quote. And just now Marco seemed to have used the amazing move that he used to kick my concubine. Single quote. Doctor, will he be okay? Single quote. Shijisu clenched her fist and placed it on her heart. A look of worry appeared on her face. Wait until the first burst of the fiercest wind blows. Snake Girl stabilized her body and looked at the center of the storm again. My eyes suddenly widened in surprise. Doctor. And Marco. Snake Girl was shocked to see that in the center of the storm, Loya withstood the impact of Marco's bird claws with only one right hand. But there was no real contact between the two. But there is an invisible layer of amazing Haki energy. Marco's Haki and Loya's Haki are constantly wrestling with each other, but they haven't decided yet. At the same time, it also led to the subsequent shock waves and storms, which continued to violently sweep out from the center of the competition between the two of them. However, although there is no difference between the two, but in Shiji's view, Marco's face looked constipated, and he was obviously giving his all without any reservation. And Loya not only used one hand, but also, Doctor, she's actually laughing. Looking at Loya in the center of the storm, her clothes are fluttering, she is proud and elegant, and she is smiling elegantly. Shiji was stunned for a moment. Doctor, Kakuichi, so handsome. Shiji actually had a slightly nymphomaniac look in her eyes. Chapter 28. Boom. Z-la-la. Crackling, banging and rumbling. The black and red Haki double flashes are intertwined. The expression on Marco's face was obviously one of extreme shock and anger. Loya actually used only the double entanglement of Conquerors and emission on his right hand to resist his Phoenix seal. With the double entanglement of Conquerors and emission on the blade of his left hand, he was hiding in front of Marco. Completely defeated in one blow. Although Marco only saw the scene of Izo flying out upside down and did not see its final scene, based on the previous situations of Josie and Bista, it is not difficult to imagine. Although Yizang's knowledge and appearance are more outstanding than the two, his physical strength and ability to withstand injuries are obviously much worse than those of Josie and the others. The double Haki windings that Loya directly wrapped around the sword's edge were surprisingly more solid in quality than the double Haki windings that were wrapped around the pure black sword energy. Presumably, since the latter, Thunder 8 trigrams, are easier to control and can wrap more at one time, they are more powerful. But compared to Divine Avoidance, it also loses the long-range advantage. And, the Phoenix seal entwined with the double Haki on Loya's right hand, and after they slammed together, the powerful Haki shockwave that blasted outwards also caused considerable secondary damage to the nearest Izo. Therefore, Marco can fully imagine that Izo, who was knocked out, must have completely lost consciousness and may not be able to get up again within a few days. He tried his best to stop him, but not only did he not achieve any merit, but he actually intensified the harm to his companions. How could this not make Marco feel indignant and frightened? Shame. A huge sense of shame enveloped Marco's heart. Even with his Phoenix seal kick, Loya was kicked 50 meters away from his original position, leaving a deep groove on the ground. But it was just superficial and did not cause any substantial harm to Loya. But now, in the Haki wrestling with Loya, Marco's original advantage of diving has been completely lost and turned into a disadvantage. Because I am in midair with nothing to rely on, I can only rely on my wings and back to continuously consume a lot of Haki to push. But Loya has his feet on the ground, relying on the earth, and only needs to concentrate Haki on his right hand, and he can do it with ease. If the wrestling continues like this, Marco will soon decline, and Loya will seize the opportunity and hit him hard. However, Marco still insisted on wrestling with Loya at the huge disadvantage of having to sacrifice and consume a huge amount of Haki and physical strength. Just because he is not fighting alone. Murloc Namur, Foil Bista, Diamond Josie. Among the three of them, in the initial Haki shockwave, only Josie, who had been seriously injured previously, was knocked away. Namur and Bista both used Haki to withstand the impact. At this moment, the two of them are getting ready to go. And Josie is on his way over too. Izo's instant kill reminded Marco that he must not let him have any chance to take advantage of Loya. Otherwise, they will be defeated by Loya, who takes the time to find the opportunity and defeat them one by one. By then, they are afraid that they will be completely defeated, and how can they regain their position? The only way for them to win is to use all their strength at all costs to create opportunities for other companions to defeat Loya. Beasta, Namur, launch the first phase of the offensive together. Joes, activate the second phase. Don't worry if it hurts me. Use your strongest skills now. At that moment, Marco used the most violent hockey release gesture, suppressing Loya and not giving Loya a chance to escape, while shouting loudly. It's not that he has murderous intentions towards Loya. It's about the desire to win and buy Tuan's face. And he knew that Loya, like him, had amazing recovery abilities and could recover quickly even if he was seriously injured. A person has a face and a tree has a skin. What he wants is to regain some face. Received, X2. In both directions, the two people who were already preparing to attack immediately darkened their eyes after hearing Marco's instructions. The momentum accumulated suddenly increased again. As Marco said, there are no more reservations. Powder body shatter bone. The fishman Namur opened his two big hands with palms, and the powerful emission hockey was drawn from all over his body and concentrated on it. The veins on the arms are even more prominent, and almost all the power in the blood is poured into these arms and wrists. Murloc, shark bomb. He roared wildly, smashed the ground with his feet, and rushed towards Loya. Rush faster and faster, rush faster and faster. The momentum was like a crazy bison, sprinting without fear of being shattered to pieces. The situation on Beasta's side seems even more shocking. The flowers fell into mud, but the fragrance remains as before. Although the rose is soft, it still has thorns. He squinted his eyes flashed scarlet, and sang in a low voice. With the will to turn flowers into clay, he burned his own spirit and poured the extremely terrifying armament hockey into the two swords. Thorns, iron cross. With a loud shout, his whole body, but as light as petals, flew away with the wind and shot out. In the midair, Beasta is still as light as a petal, swaying in the wind, and his figure is unpredictable. It is difficult for the observation hockey to capture its trajectory. And the two swords crossed forward in his hands, the black hockey on them is covered with a layer of scarlet color, like thorns stained with human blood. These two, especially Beasta, are one of the three strongest leaders of the white team. And Namur has never participated in a battle before, and now he is full of energy and exerting his full strength. Loya, on the other hand, was unable to get away for a while because of Marco's all-out entanglement. If these two people are allowed to fall on him, even if only one of them attacks with full force, I'm afraid he will vomit blood and be injured on the spot. When Shiji saw this scene more than 100 meters away, her beautiful eyes widened in shock and anger. Even Sha Lulia, who knew nothing about it, saw that the situation was critical and couldn't help but sweat secretly. And there is another figure, also rushing towards me. None other than Diamond Josie. He will launch a second attack after the first attack by Beasta and Namur. Seeing this scene, Chowzi couldn't help but be excited, feeling that he had a chance to win. Hee, call me and see how powerful we are, he thought. But at this moment, Loya's eyes are scarlet and bright, and the smile on the corner of her mouth is getting stronger. He thrust the long sword in his left hand into the ground at will, causing the long sword to pierce into the ground, leaving only a hilt. However, gently press your left hand on your chest. Single quote. What is he going to do? Single quote. Marco looked at Loya's smile and movements at close range, and couldn't help but be startled. Does he still have a strong backup plan? Single quote. Marco couldn't help but panic when he thought of this. Impossible, in this case, he is absolutely at his wit's end. Single quote. Even if there is a backup, it is at most a defensive backup. Single quote. Want to fight back in this situation? Absolutely impossible. Single quote. Absolutely impossible. Single quote. Comma. Temporary optimization armament hockey quality enhancement. Single quote. Optimization time, 10 seconds. Single quote. Hockey improvement level, 100 times. Single quote. Temporary optimization conquerors hockey quality enhancement. Single quote. Optimization time, 10 seconds. Single quote. Hockey improvement level, 100 times. Single quote. That's right. Among Loya's optimization, permanent optimization cannot make Loya's power much stronger at one time, but the advantage is that the effect is permanent once and for all. But temporary optimization is no small matter. By shortening the effect time of temporary optimization, you can maximize your power in a short period of time. The shorter the effect, the stronger the temporary optimization improvement. Buzz, buzz. At the moment of strengthening, Loya seemed to hear two soft sounds. And it was also at this moment. Marco was horrified and discovered that Haki, who was wrestling with Loya's right hand, suddenly became stronger. Marco couldn't tell how much he had become stronger, but the bad premonition made Marco's eyes tremble. Chapter 29. Emission. Domineering. All the Haki produced in the whole body is gathered together for a high degree of concentration and compression. Therefore, its power is many times more powerful than covering or dispersing the impact. This is easy to understand. A piece of paper can be broken with just a slight poke, but 100 or 1,000 pieces of paper will be difficult to break. But please imagine if a person's Haki was strengthened 100 times. It's like this piece of paper has the strength of 100 pieces of paper. So, after Loya's Haki was strengthened 100 times, there is no need to gather all Haki together. You can scatter them around your whole body. Form an absolutely blind angle defense. And the name of this move. Broke into pieces Emloculent Shark Bullet. Iron Cross of Thorns. Namuel the Fishman, Beasta the Foil Sword. The two of them have the strongest move that combines all their physical and mental strength. Carrying a terrifying scream that shocked the atmosphere. Coming soon. At this moment, Loya also slowly recited in his heart, Haki's unique trick that he developed himself that is 100 times stronger. Shuangba Tang Shinluo Tianzheng. Single quote. Heaven and earth are silent. The black and red Haki bloomed from Loya's body, forming a protective shield-like light group that stretched out several meters. Strings of black and red winding thunder snakes jumped out like giant pythons, tearing the surface downward, split the sky upward. But strangely silent. It's not that there is really no sound, but the vibration amplitude of this sound is far beyond what the human eardrum can accept. It is also called ultrasound. The twin hegemonic light clusters surrounding Loya shook the surrounding atmosphere, and the entire Nine Snakes Island vibrated with high frequency and small amplitude. The bone-shattering shark bomb that Murloc Namuel had accomplished in one battle hit the two domineering light balls. The initial blow, which was accompanied by strong inertia, was still able to dent an inch of palm print on Shuangba's light group. But in less than a second, after the inertial force disappeared, the Fishman Namir's hand's emission were bounced back an inch. No matter how hard he roared, he could not break through. The iron cross of thorns slashed by the foil sword Beasta landed on the twin tyrant's light group, and only cut in 2 inches. It was still more than 2 meters away from actually hitting Loya. So his 2 inches are approximately equal to nothing. Although Marco's bird claws were always entangled with a large amount of emission Haki, after Loya opened the double domination energy shield, he directly pushed his bird claws back. After Marco felt the terrifying power of these two dominating energy shields, he was almost in disbelief. How can this be? Single quote. 4 captains. Such a shocking thought appeared in my mind almost at the same time. Right, 30 meters away, Chaozi stared at this scene with dumbfounded eyes. Marco, Beasta, and Namur, the 3 famous white team captains, are almost as powerful as the ones in the New World. The all-out attack might not even damage the other 4 emperors, but it was completely unable to shake Loya's defense. What made Josie even more frightened was, from Loya's black and red domineering energy shield, scarlet and black flashes shot out, and the terrifying aura that came out actually made Josie's body tremble slightly. Suddenly, even breathing and making fists became very difficult. Because of this, Josie completely stopped moving forward, stayed on the spot, and even wanted to retreat. Such terrifying power. To say that Loya has reached the level of a general is to belittle him, right? This is clearly the state of the Emperor, right? Only when Roger and Whitebeard fight with all their strength can they exude such terrifying power, right? Snake G was completely stunned. Okay, so strong. Conquerors makes me feel numb. The lingering and escaping aura of Loya's double tyrants made Snake Princess, 100 meters away, feel as if her whole body was being caressed by bursts of electricity. A slight numbing feeling spreads throughout the body. Probably because she was suffering from internal injuries and exhausted, she was unable to muster the strength to fight against Loya's escaped conquerors. And Loya's conquerors has some kind of evil power, which is very corrosive to women. Snake G's cheeks turned red for a moment. She quietly clamped those plump long legs. And behind her, Shalulia felt the aggressive conqueror's haki coming from her brother. Although she hadn't fainted yet, she had already collapsed to the ground. Waves of conqueror's electricity caressed. Her cheeks were glowing and her juices were flowing. What's going on? Why, I feel like my brother is treating me, Further back, all the 9 snake female warriors have fainted. If we say, armed color is the cohesion of a small amount of mental power and most of the physical essence. So, conquerors is the manifestation of pure spiritual will. The color of the weapon is like water, fire, or gold. Full of the toughness and destructive power of reality. Conquerors, on the other hand, is like wind, light, and electricity. Full of ethereal, unpredictable and swift power. The manifestation of this spiritual will. It can be mildly intimidating and frightening, making it difficult to move and unable to muster the strength to resist for a while. At worst, it will directly smash the opponent's will, causing the person to faint and fall to the ground, unable to get up again. And if it continues to be strengthened 100 times. This kind of spiritual willpower can even erode the will of others. The less guarded you are, the closer you are to us. Just like Snake Princess and Shalulia, because of good feelings and care, because of love and dependence. And in an instant, he was eroded by Loya's will. It just so happens that Loya has a strong desire to possess these 2 women. Therefore, after being eroded by this possessive will, the 2 girls actually had some physiological reactions. Back to Marco. Although this battle, it seems that it has failed again. But Marco finally breathed a sigh of relief. Because the energy shield formed by the double hegemony is clearly a defensive move. Although this kind of defense is indeed earth-shattering and unshakable, it can be called an invincible defense. However, Marco couldn't see that this terrifying power was definitely only temporary and could not last for long. Therefore, they still have a chance to defeat Loya. Just keep holding on. There will be a chance. Beasta and Namuel have the same mentality at the moment. They have rich combat experience, and they also feel that Loya's terrifying power cannot last forever. As long as they persist, they will win in the end. But the 2 tyrants were entangled in the energy shield. The corners of Loya's mouth twitched slightly. If the Shinra Tensei can only be used for defense, can it still be called the Shinra Tensei? I saw his lips parted slightly, and he softly uttered one word. Open. Double dominance. It became a double exposure. Moreover, it is released powerfully immediately after accumulating power. Terrifying double haki impact. Moment. Chapter 30. The air covers the whole world, and the red thunder trembles in the sky. Loya whispered. Open. The 2 tyrants unleashed their power, and in an instant, they blasted away Marco and the 3 of them as if they were devastating. Whoa. Wow. Conqueror's thunder penetrated their strong bodies, shattered their tenacious spirits and wills, and shocked their tempered flesh and nerves. The armed shock wave directly used powerful real-life destructive power to severely damage their strong muscles, fascia and bones that they had worked hard to temper for decades. Almost at the same time, the 3 of them vomited a mouthful of blood. The impact of the double tyrants was released, and they were pushed out at an astonishing speed. How can this be? Single quote. When this thought flashed through Beasta and Nemours' minds, their eyes immediately turned white and they fainted. 30 meters away. Chaozi wanted to retreat now, but it was already too late. The speed of the double tyrants is too fast. In the blink of an eye, it was pushed forward. As soon as he finished turning around, he was hit hard in the back by the shock wave from the double tyrants. On the spot, he spat out a large mouthful of blood, rolled his eyes, and was stunned by the terrifying power. Loya then clasped his hands together fiercely. Receive. However, Xuangba continued to push forward nearly 20 meters. It was only because of Loya's incredibly powerful mental will that he forcibly restrained it and wrapped it around Loya's body and returned. But there is still nearly half of the volume, which has completely escaped Loya's control, and continues to sweep out in all directions in an astonishing manner, forming a violent and raging storm mixed with black lightning. The world seemed to suddenly have sound again. However, it was the sound of a thunderstorm that destroyed the heaven and earth. Rumble. Z-la-la. Ah. The Empress was blown away by the diluted double hockey storm. Ah. Shalulia was not much better. All the fainting 9 snakes female warriors were blown away. The surrounding big trees within 500 meters were directly uprooted by the astonishing storm. The land cracked and the wind and sand filled the sky. After a few breaths, the astonishing storm swept across the entire 9 Snakes Island and blew straight to the sea. Plop, plop, plop. On the coast and in the jungle, the white team members and the 9 snake female warriors who were fighting were struck by conquerors and fainted to the ground one after another. After a blink of an eye, the number of people who were still standing there was less than 1 in 100. Astonishing black thunder exploded in the sky of 9 Snake Island. The cumulus clouds in the sky have been swept away. The 2 Buster Call class warships parked on the sea surface dozens of meters away from the coast were hit by the aftermath of the twin Hockeys, and many cracks appeared on the hulls. On the sea, the seawater was stirred up by the storm into huge waves several meters high, rolling outwards. What happened? How could there be such a terrible storm? After the storm passed, the few survivors stared blankly at their unconscious companions and enemies on the ground with horrified expressions. The female warrior Margaret quickly ran towards the direction of the storm. This is. After a while, Margaret, who rushed to the nearby place, looked at the scene here, her beautiful eyes couldn't help but tremble. The big tree was uprooted and fell to the ground. The ground is full of cracks. And look inside. The terrain that was originally a hill has turned into a depression. At the very center, there was a huge pit with a diameter of 100 meters and a depth of dozens of meters. What happened? Margaret could hardly believe her eyes. Was this place hit by a huge meteorite from the sky? However, can the storm caused by the meteorite impact knock out so many soldiers? So, what exactly happened here? This doesn't seem to be something humans can do anymore, right? Swish, swish, swish. The sound of gentle footsteps came. Margaret was immediately startled. She grabbed the long bow, instantly completed the action of nodding the arrow and drawing the bow, and aimed at the location where the sound came from. But I saw an embarrassed figure walking slowly and unsteadily. His body is still burning with green flames. It's him. Single quote. The captain of the Whitebeard pirates. Marco the Phoenix. Single quote. Captain Jikyo told me that a strong man at his level can knock me down with just one finger. Only the Empress can compete with her. But, why does he look so scarred and exhausted now? Single quote. Margaret was astonished, and Marco's current embarrassed and harmless appearance also made her hesitate and did not attack immediately. Did the Empress defeat him? Single quote. Margaret guessed, but she felt vaguely that something was wrong. It's such a complete failure. However, Marco suddenly spoke, and slowly squatted down and sat on the sand. He fumbled for a long time, took out a cigarette from his pants pocket and lit it. Let's negotiate in 3 days. They will probably have to sleep for a while. A voice came suddenly from behind Margaret. Margaret was startled. The bow and arrow were shot directly behind him. A white hand gently held the arrow. And the owner of this hand smiled gently at her. Then when walking past her, he gently put the arrow into her quiver. Marco looked at Loya with lazy eyes. There was something I wanted to say in my heart, but I knew it was not the right time to speak, so in the end I just smoked in silence. Doctor, elder brother. The 2 women, 1 foot deep and 1 foot shallow, stepped on the sandy ground and returned here. Your Majesty the Empress. When Margaret saw her master, she immediately ran up to him with joy. However, Snake Girl didn't even look at her and ran straight in the direction of the man. Quote. Margaret stayed where she was. Doctor, brother, are you injured anywhere? 2 women, surrounding Loya, asked with concern on their faces. Shalulia survived the Conqueror's storm, which really surprised Loya. Then, Loya looked at Shiji with a shy look and said, I don't know what the grudge is between Bai Tuan and 9 snakes, why they want to attack 9 snakes. But I know Whitebeard is the strongest man in the world. So, even though I defeated Marco and the others, I still advocate peaceful negotiation to resolve this matter. Miss Shiji, I wonder if you can understand what I'm doing. Hearing this, Shiji immediately woke up from her concern for Loya. She pondered for a moment, nodded and said, speaking of which, I was saved by you, the doctor. So in this matter, I should naturally follow your advice, doctor. Everything. Just do it according to your ideas, doctor. Although Snake Girl is prone to impulsivity and emotion, she can always calm down when it comes to big issues. It would be gratifying to kill Marco and the others and vent their anger. But what good will this do to the future of Nine Snake Island? The stronger Whitebeard, as well as the 43 pirate groups under the Whitebeard pirates, with a total army of 50,000 people, have not really been dispatched yet. Will they let go after killing Marco? I'm afraid it won't be long before the end of the Nine Snakes' daughter kingdom is truly over, right? Good. Loya smiled and nodded. In that case, we will formally negotiate with Marco and the others in 3 days. In these 3 days, you both should take some rest. I will treat both injured parties. Shiji nodded in understanding. It is better to dissolve enemies than to make enemies. Loya's treatment of the Whitebeard group is also helping resolve conflicts on Nine Snake Island. She can still grasp this truth clearly. Mr. Doctor, I would like to entertain you first. I wonder, Sir Doctor, can you please allow me to sit in my humble palace in the palace? I clenched my pink fists tightly and asked with a shy and expectant look. Do not misunderstand. Shiji's shyness at the moment is mainly out of gratitude. It's just that she has never communicated normally with men, which is why she seems so clumsy. My pleasure. But I think it's better to help Miss Shiji first and treat the remaining injuries. If it takes too long, it will hurt your body. Loya said softly, then smiled towards Shiji and stretched out her hand. After Shiji hesitated for a while, she slowly stretched out one of her slender hands and gently placed it on Loya's palm with a shy face. Quote exclamation mark. Quote. Margaret, who was behind Snake Princess, had her eyes widened and was shocked for 10,000 years. Thanks for watching. Please like and subscribe.